All right, guys. So hello. Sorry I couldn't be with you today, or if you're watching this from the digital realm, this is going to be our recording for Act One, and I'm gonna try to be super excited, but I'm recording this on a Sunday, so. Um, all right, let's go ahead and let's go in. So you guys have either your blue copy for some of my students, or you guys have the yellow copy for some of my other students. So I picked different copies for different reasons for you guys. So if you have the blue copy, you're going to start on page 7. 7. If you have the yellow copy, you're going to be starting on page 21. Okay. While we're reading, I'm not gonna have these up for you. You guys should be following along in your text with the sub in the room, your headphones on. Or again, if you're watching this just at home, just paying attention and following along. The books should be in the back corner. If you didn't get them last week, if you have any books to leave there, remember you guys are welcome to. I have to return the cart back this week, so make sure if you haven't grabbed your book, you grab your book. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and screen share. And what I'm gonna do is I am gonna have my notes up. That'll just be easier for me. I'm gonna also have the synthesis up there. If you guys, the synthesis presentation, if you guys need it, remember the last slide has the online copy if you need it. Again, though, your book should be checked out to you unless you are one of my digital students and you haven't come to get your book. Extreme frustration. Come get your book from the library, please. It's just something that I'm going to be looking for as far as page numbers for your final paper. I don't want you guys just kind of breezing through this online. It's probably going to be our last piece of literature, like a full piece of literature that we're going to be reading together. So let's just try to give it the effort it deserves. If you guys are going through this with me, we're going to be talking about themes and main ideas that we find along the way. Because remember, your synthesis paper, you're going to try to connect two pieces of literature that we've read so far to Macbeth. A main theme, main idea, something that kind of travels through all three pieces of literature that you use to connect them together. So we're going to be thinking about the things that we've read, like we did in the presentation last week. So Crane's Night, All Quiet on the Western Front. We remember war. We remember morality versus duty, right? The damages that battle and killing another person can do to someone. The damages that adversity, struggles can cause to somebody. The permanent damages that the soldiers attain from All Quiet on the Western Front and the trench warfare, how they're never really kind of able to be fully happy again because of everything that was done to them. We have the lottery and Lord of the Flies. Leadership is actually something we talked about when it came to Lord of the Flies and even All Quiet on the Western Front. And we'll see the different kinds of leaderships in Macbeth. We have this idea of mob mentality. We have this idea of the supernatural too in Lord of the Flies. You guys remember the pig's head talking to Simon, being the kind of evil incarnate on the island, making predictions that come true. So there is that element of superstition and like the supernatural in there. And then we had social justice. Now, period 1 didn't correct me, so that you guys know in the recordings when we talk about themes, period 1, because I was able to teach it for the first time because I just got enough books for the one class, I thought that it would be interesting to read a long way down with period 1. So period 1, you guys read long way down. My other periods read I Am Malala, the youth version. So we're both equally kind of like shorter reads, but we still had this idea of social justice. We had this idea of kind of being born into a role and feeling like you have to fill that role, feeling like you are kind of tied by the hands of fate in order to do whatever you think your role in this world is to do, right? Kind of being forced into those stereotypes as well in Black men in public spaces, the frustration he feels when he's pushed into these kind of identities that are just not his identity, but because the color of his skin, people see him and they judge him that way. So we're gonna try very, 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 very hard to bring these up as we read, but usually it'll be kind of like in the review when we talk in class and kind of closer to the paper. But I really need you guys to be thinking critically as we're reading this, looking at the themes and trying to see if there's characters or events or anything small or big that we can connect back to the other readings, okay? All right, so during the reading, I'm gonna go ahead and have my reviews up here. These are not published outside of the videos because they're mine. They're notes that I make for myself so that I can kind of keep track of where we are and what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and start scene 1 here in a moment. Scene 1 is going to open up with the supernatural. From the videos that you guys watched, you remember it kind of opening up, lightning, thunder. He says it opens with a crack of thunder, and these witches are making this like meeting together and conspiring. Well, we'll find out what they're conspiring about. But right away, we have the supernatural kind of coming in at the beginning of the play. Remember, King James loves the supernatural. So this is something that is there to get not only the general crowd's attention, but the attention of King James. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start out. We're going to listen, just listen to the audio book, and then I'll go back and we'll talk about it. It's very short, so it shouldn't be too traumatizing for you guys. All right.
Is audible.
From Simon & Schuster Audio.
Folger Theater at Folger Shakespeare Library presents Macbeth by William Shakespeare.
When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?
When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
That will be ere the set of sun.
Where the place?
Upon the heath.
There to meet with Macbeth.
I come, Greymalkin.
Paddock calls.
Anon.
Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air.
Kind of like the violin there. Very, very Firefly kind of music. If you don't know what that is, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at this scene. Super short. We have the witches meeting together. There's three of them coming together in this wild part of the forest, right? Your books have different descriptions, but essentially we're in the wilderness in Scotland, medieval Scotland, and these three witches are meeting together, and they're talking of when they will meet again, right? They have plans to meet again in the near future, and this meeting is to happen after all of the chaos is over, the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. So they know that, we talked about this, the beginning of this play opens up with the rebellion against King Duncan and Malcolm and Macbeth and Banquo and many of the other nobles kind of fighting to squash this rebellion, right? So there is a battle going on right now, and the witches are kind of meeting in the chaos of it going on elsewhere. So once this battle is over, near the setting of the sun, they will meet on the heath, and there they will meet Macbeth. So they already know of Macbeth. He doesn't know of them, but they know of him, right? So they plan to meet him. And that's all we know so far. right? They know that once the battle is over, they're going to go to the heath and meet Macbeth there and tell this prediction to him. The last thing that we want to, a couple things. When they call out to their familiars, these demon spirits that kind of guide them and help them with their power, Grey Malkin and Paddock, they'll talk a lot of this kind of like supernatural forces around them, right, or kind of surrounding them. So know that is kind of almost like confirmation that there is some kind of legitimate supernatural about them, but we have to kind of question whether or not they are truly magical, they are truly able to predict the future. And the whole play is really going to kind of not focus, but have us question that idea. Are they really truly supernatural witches that can conjure things and know the future, or are they just elements of chaos trying to bring action into the world that wouldn't have otherwise happened, right? So in the very, very last bit of here, they all together come through and say this line, fair is foul and foul is fair. When we think about that line, fair, right, we think of good, we think of beautiful, we think of fine, as essentially positive things, right? And we think of foul, we think of deteriorating, we think of ugly, we think of decaying, we think of negative, right? And that line that fair is foul, right? Good is bad and bad is good, kind of shows us that they might be a little bit more bringers of chaos than bringers of truth. They kind of point out that nothing is truly what it seems to be. It doesn't matter if someone appears to be good, they're fully capable of evil. And it doesn't matter if someone appears to be evil, they're fully capable of good. And we're going to kind of see that reflect again in the main character of Macbeth. We have this man who comes in as this war hero, as someone who is kind of the conqueror and the victor of the rebellion and a loyal subject of his king. And at the same time, we'll slowly kind of see when these bringers of chaos give him, the news that he might be king, all of a sudden these foul thoughts begin entering this otherwise good man's mind as to what he can be capable of, right? All right, so let's go ahead and let's move on to scene 2. So that should have been like one page for both of you. Doesn't matter which book you're in, yellow or blue. So you guys, blue is on page 9 now. Yellow is on page 23. We have Duncan's camp near the battlefield. The battle is raging nearby. Rebels are fighting the king's troops. The trumpet sounds, and Duncan enters with Malcolm and Donalbain. Remember, those are his sons. And then we have the lords in attendance because the king is never, ever alone. So we're going to probably pause a couple times here to make sure we're understanding what's going on, because we're going to have a lot of talk. Remember, I told you guys we have a lot of talk of what's happening off of the stage because we can't reenact those battles. We have to kind of just hear about them. So that's going to be something that happens in this scene. So here we go.
What bloody man is that? He can report, as seemeth by his plight, of the revolt, the newest state.
This is the sergeant, who, like a good and hardy soldier, fought against my captivity. Hail, brave friend! Say to the king the knowledge of the broil as thou didst leave it.
Doubtful it stood, as two spent swimmers that do cling together and choke their art. The merciless MacDonald, worthy to be a rebel, for to that the multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him, from the western isles, of kerns and gallowglasses is supplied, and fortune, on his damned quarrel smiling, showed like a rebel's whore. Yeah, but all's too weak. For brave Macbeth, well he deserves that name, disdaining fortune, with his brandished steel, which smoked with bloody execution, like valor's minion, carved out his passage till he faced the slave. which ne'er shook hands, nor bade farewell to him, till he unseamed him from the nave to the chops, and fixed his head upon our battlements.
O valiant cousin, worthy gentleman!
As whence the sun gins his reflection, shipwracking storms and direful thunders break, so from that spring whence comfort seemed to come, discomfort swells. Ah, mark! King of Scotland, mark! No sooner justice had, with valor armed, compelled these skipping kerns to trust their heels, but the Norwegian lord, surveying vantage, with furbished arms and new supplies of men began a fresh assault.
Dismayed not this our captains, Macbeth and Banquo?
Yes, as sparrows eagles, or the hare the lion. If I say sooth, I must report they were as cannons, overcharged with double cracks, so they doubly redoubled strokes upon the foe, except they meant to bathe in reeking wounds or memorize another Golgotha. I cannot tell. But I am faint. My gashes cry for help.
So well thy words become thee as thy wounds. They smack of honor both. Go, get him surgeons.
Okay, so we're near the battlefield, right? And we have this young captain anyway. We have this captain come in, and he's bloody and kind of beat up from battle, right? So he's obviously someone who's come in from the fight. And Duncan and Malcolm kind of ask him for information as to what has been going on, right? What, like, you look like someone who's seen it, man. So tell us what has happened. And so this captain begins to tell a tale of the rebellion, the merciless MacDonald. It sounds like he says McDonald, but is the rebellion, right? Is the one kind of trying to rise up against Duncan. And we have kind of this like hopeless situation until online, I apologize, the lines aren't really super matching up in between the two texts. But we have this line, for brave Macbeth, well, he deserves that name, disdaining fortune with his brandished steel, which smoked with bloody execution like valor's minion, carved out his passage till he faced the slave. So this idea of Macbeth coming up with his blade and literally just carving through men as he approaches the rebel himself, right? Till he unseamed him from nave to the chops, cut him open, and fixed his head upon our battlements. So Macbeth kind of single-handedly, we have this story of this heroic scene where he comes in and just barrels his way towards the rebel leader here and butchers him right there on the battlefield, cuts off his head, and marks it as this victory, right? So we haven't even met Macbeth yet, and we already have this indication that he is this guy that you just do not mess with. Following this great news, we get even worse news, right? We have, let's see here. So we have a different portion of the battlefield having to retreat. No sooner justice had, with valor armed, compelled these skipping kerns to trust their heels, but the Norwegian lord, surveying vantage, with furbished arms and new supplies of men, began a fresh assault. Dismayed not this, our captains Banquo and Macbeth and Banquo. So we have this scene where a fresh attack begins to take place, right? Despite Macbeth's kind of valiant effort here. And their response could not be stronger. They fought twice as hard, and where's the line? They doubly redoubled strokes upon the foe, except they meant to bathe in reeking wounds or memorize another Golgotha. I cannot tell, but I am faint and I need to go get sewn back up because I'm falling apart, right? So just this idea of of painting this picture of Banquo and Macbeth as these war heroes, these men that should not be messed with or should not be questioned on the battlefield, right? They've proven their worth just by the words of this captain. I think some of you guys, the yellow version has him as a sergeant, but he's just kind of a teller of the tale, right? What actually happened on the battlefield. So gosh darn it, these men are strong and vanquishers, right? So here we're going to go ahead after the king, and this good news that the king's here and all this, right? It's good news for Macbeth and Banquo because they sound like tough little cookies to him, right? So let's go ahead and let's continue now that the captain or sergeant, whichever text you have, has left for the surgeon.
Who comes here?
The worthy Thane of Ross! What a haste looks through his eyes. So should he look that seems to speak things strange. God save the king!
Whence camest thou, worthy Thane?
From Fife, great king, where the Norwegian banners flout the sky and fan our people cold. Norway himself, with terrible numbers, assisted by that most disloyal traitor, the Thane of Cawdor, began a dismal conflict, till that Bellona's bridegroom, lapped in proof, confronted him with self-comparisons, point against point, rebellious arm against arm, curbing his lavish spirit, and to conclude, the victory fell on us!
Great happiness!
That now Sweno, the Norway's king, craves composition. Nor would we deign him burial of his men till he disperse it at St. Colum's Inch, $10,000 to our general use.
No more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interest. Go, pronounce his present death, and with his former title greet Macbeth.
I'll see it done.
What he hath lost, noble Macbeth hath won.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep letting that play because I love it. All right, so our nobleman Ross comes in with more news. There has been a final conquering in one of the other areas of rebellion. The Norwegian rebel had actually been assisted by the Thane of Cawdor, which was he was supposed to be on Duncan's side, right? Thane of Cawdor began a dismal conflict till the Bellona's bridegroom lapped in proof, confronted him with self-comparisons, point against point, rebellious arm against arm, curbing his lavish spirit, and to conclude, the victory fell upon us. So we have this battle here with the additional rebel, the Thane of Cawdor, and Ross reports vanquishing him as well, right? So the Thane of Cawdor is a title that, again, Duncan gave to this man, and he betrayed Duncan. So, so as punishment for his betrayal, King Duncan has him ordered to death, right? He basically orders that he is pronounced his death, and with his former title, greet Macbeth. So we are going to go ahead and already know something that Macbeth does not know. As an audience, we now know that because of the Thane of Cawdor's betrayal and his imminent death, Duncan is awarding Macbeth for his bravery in the battlefield. I guess like you heard more good things about Macbeth than Banquo, but I feel like Banquo still did a good amount, but Macbeth is the one that is treated here. So Macbeth will gain the Thane of Cawdor, which is the title that this man that's going to die is going to lose, right? So we know this. Macbeth does not know this yet. This is something that only the audience is presented with. So when we go into scene 3, the importance of scene 2 is, 1, to establish with us the kind of man we believe, we can give us information on Macbeth, right? He's brave, he's strong, he's loyal, he's intelligent, fierce, right? We kind of have these idealistic these idealistic heroic visions of Macbeth. So that is set up with the audience. We also have this setup of knowing that he is going to be awarded for this fantastic behavior of his with this Thane of Cawdor title. But as audience members, we also know that the witches are planning to kind of intervene in his life and make a little bit of chaos. So we're going to go ahead and pick up in scene 3, a bleak place near the battlefield. So leaving the battlefield, Macbeth and Banquo meet the witches, who are gleefully discussing the trouble they have caused. The witches hail Macbeth by a title he already holds, the Thane of Glamis. So that is something that Macbeth already knows he holds, right? Then they prophesize that he will be Thane of Cawdor and king. When Banquo asks about his future, we're going to kind of see that whole scene play out that we saw previously, right? When I showed you guys in the presentation, Banquo doesn't fully believe the witches, and so he kind of like eggs them on to get them to predict his future as well. So this is that scene where Banquo and Macbeth are leaving the battlefield and encountering the witches for the first time. And this is our first encounter with Macbeth, the actual Macbeth, not someone talking about him. All right.
Where hast thou been, sister?
Killing swine.
Sister, where thou?
A sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap, and munched and munched and munched. Give me, quoth I. Right thee, witch, the rump-fed Runyon cries. Her husband's to Aleppo gone, master of the tiger, but in a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail, I'll do, and I'll do.
I'll give thee a wind.
The kind.
And I another.
I myself have all the other, and the very ports they blow, all the quarters that they know in a shipman's card. I'll drain him dry as hay. Sleep shall neither night nor day hang upon his penthouse lid. He shall live, a man forbid. Weary 7 nights, 9 times 9 shall he dwindle, peak, and pine. Though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be tempest-tossed. Look what I have.
Show me, show me.
Here I have a pilot's thumb, racked as homeward he did come.
A drum, Macbeth doth come.
The weird sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about, thrice to thine, and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace. The charm's wound up.
Okay, very creepy voice actors that they have here. So the very beginning of this scene, we have nothing to do with Macbeth, at least not with the witch's conversation. It kind of indicates that what kind of trying to think of the word, motive, there we go, motive that the witches would have to give Macbeth this prediction, because we get an indicator of the type of people they are, if you can call them people. So we have the tale of the first witch talking about, I don't know if it's the first witch on both copies, but yes, no, it's the first witch, telling a story of a sailor's wife who has chestnuts that she's eating in front of the witch, and the witch asks her to share, give me one. And the woman says, "Be gone," right? Tells her to get off, and banishes her. And so this witch finds out that her husband is actually a sailor on the vessel called the Tiger. And if you guys caught what she plans to do to this man because of the wife's greediness or lack of wanting to, you know, care for her, however you want to spin it, this could either be seen as kind of giving someone what they deserve, right, for being judgmental and being greedy. Maybe we're punishing a woman who has no kindness in her heart, and the witch is rightful in her punishment. But then maybe this is also an indicator of maybe viciousness or cruelty in the witches, right? But she plans to basically torment her husband upon this ship, make him restless, make him ill, make him sick, and kind of bring horrible passage to the ship, so that something horrible might happen to it, in addition to kind of tormenting him the whole way, right? So this is the charm, the curse that they cast before Macbeth comes along. So we have to kind of really think about this. What does this say about the witch's motives for getting involved with human beings, right? Why would, you know, with all of this power that supposedly they have, why would they want to get involved with Macbeth? What possible reasons could they have for their benefit? Or again, are they just bringers of chaos? Are they just creatures that, you know, evil creatures that like to bring darkness into the world, and or bring the darkness out in human beings, right? So I thought it was important to kind of note that curse that they give before they actually encounter Macbeth, because we see a little bit of them, like their purpose in one thing, and so we can kind of question, okay, so why would these witches decide that they want to get involved with Macbeth? What is the whole purpose here? What kind of witches are these, right? What's the point? So let's go ahead and let's continue with their meeting of Macbeth.
So foul and fair a day I have not seen.
A forest called to forest. What are these? So withered and so wild in their attire that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are aught. Live you? Or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me, by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so.
Speak, if you can. What are you?
All hail Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis!
All hail, Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor!
All hail, Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter.
Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? In the name of truth, are you fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly you show? My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction, of noble having and of royal hope that he seems rapt withal. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time, and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate.
Hail!
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 Lesser than Macbeth, and greater.
Not so happy, yet much happier.
Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail, Macbeth and Banquo!
Banquo and Macbeth, all hail!
Okay, so before Macbeth responds to this, so they, again, I reviewed this with you guys before, right? They greet Banquo and Macbeth, and they greet Macbeth as his proper title, the current title, and then the title that we know he's going to acquire, right? Because we already heard the discussion with the king and that and the nobleman Ross. The Thane of Cawdor has betrayed us, cut off his head, kill him, and that will be his title will be the reward for Macbeth's bravery. So we know that. Macbeth does not. So this seems like a prediction for him, though he has no idea yet, but you kind of want to think of that. This is going to be a confirmation that the witches aren't full of it for him, right? Because we already know that title's his. And then the next prediction is the terrifying one, the idea of him becoming king. Banquo's response, if you guys remember this from the scene, right? He insults these witches. He calls them, they don't look like they should belong on this planet. They look that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on it. Live you? Are you aughts that that man may say? You seem to understand me by each at once your choppy finger laying upon your skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. So he comments on their ugliness, right? You actually have beards like men. He's not very respectful of these women. And so they shower Macbeth with these titles, right? And Banquo's response to this is kind of there's a look of shock on Macbeth's face, rightfully so, right? So Banquo looks to his friend Macbeth, and Banquo asks him, why do you start and seem so to fear things that do sound so fair? My good friend, why are you afraid of something that sounds like it's a good thing, right? To become king would be wonderful for you. He's being sarcastic here in a sense, right? He doesn't believe the witches. He's kind of mocking Macbeth's seriousness at this time, right? These are ridiculous, crazy looking women in the middle of the woods. Why would you even consider their comments to be true? And so Banquo here then asks them, if you can, he says, and say which grain will grow and which will not. If you can predict which plants will grow and which ones will die in the dirt, basically, can you predict the future? Predict my future, right? Tell me, speak to me who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate. So I don't believe you. Macbeth has this serious look upon his face. He looks terrified of what you just said, but I think you're full of it. This is Banquo's response. I think you're full of it. So you can tell me all the predictions that you want, because I'm not afraid of you. I'm not excited about the predictions, because I think that you're complete nonsense, right? You're crazy women in the forest. Why should I take you seriously? Their predictions lesser than Macbeth. The first witch is lesser than Macbeth and greater. Banquo will not have as much as Macbeth, but in a certain way will have more than Macbeth ever could. We know that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth do not have children. So the witch's prediction is that thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. This idea that Macbeth will gain the title of king, but Banquo's children will gain titles as king, right? So that's a little confusing. To predict your friend as king and yet to predict your children as future kings, that's a little confusing. And so if anything, you got to imagine this probably just encourages more, this is nonsense in Banquo's mind. But just based on his reaction to Macbeth, right? Why do you start and seem to fear? Macbeth already has this kind of facial expression that shows us that he's actually taking what these witches are saying seriously. So here's Macbeth.
Stay! You imperfect speakers, tell me more! By Sinel's death I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives! A prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Speak, I charge you!
The earth hath bubbles, as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished?
You guys are reading the sides, the witches we know that Macbeth took it seriously just by his response here. Stay, you perfect speakers, tell me more. He wants to know more of this prediction of the future. He knows that he has the current Thane title, but the Thane of Cawdor, he does not know about that, and he wants to know more about this idea of him being king. So he is like hungry, right away, hungry for more of these wonderful predictions. And Unlike Banquo, he seems to be taking them seriously. And at that, the witches just vanish. They disappear, right? Into thin air. So he won't get his elaboration on this prediction. Okay.
They vanished.
Into the air, and what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind. Would they had stayed?
Were such things here as we do speak about? Or have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner?
Your children shall be kings.
You shall be king.
And Thane of Cawdor too, and it not so?
To the self-same tune and words. Who's here?
All right, so now we have enter Ross and Angus, the nobleman that knows of Macbeth's new title, right? And so far it's just, I like how there's been no interaction with no real interaction yet with Macbeth and Banquo. Just kind of this confirmation with one and another, like you saw them, right? Like we're not we didn't eat something funny, like you saw that, I saw that was something that happened. That's all they really get. Beyond that, there's no discussion as to how either one feels about the predictions, which I think is definitely something that's done on purpose, because we will find that Macbeth keeps a lot to himself, that he's for strategic reasons. He doesn't want Banquo to know his true thoughts on these predictions.
The king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success. And when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, his wonders and his praises do contend which should be thine or his. Silenced with that, in viewing o'er the rest of the self-same day, he finds thee in the stout Norwegian ranks, nothing afeard of what thyself didst make, strange images of death. As thick as tale came post with post, and every one did bear thy praises in his kingdom's great defence, and poured them down before him.
We are sent to give thee from our royal master thanks, only to herald thee into his sight, not pay thee.
And for an earnest of a greater honour, he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor, in which addition, hail, most worthy Thane, for it is thine.
What, can the devil speak true?
The Thane of Cawdor lives. Why do you dress me in borrowed robes? Who was the Thane lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears that life which he deserves to lose. Whether he was combined with those of Norway, or did line the rebel with hidden help and vantage, or that with both he laboured in his country's wrack, I know not. But treason's capital, confessed and proved, have overthrown him. Glamis and Thane of Cawdor. The greatest is behind. Thanks for your pains. Do you not hope your children shall be kings, when those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promise no less to them?
Okay, so we have to pause here really quick. Angus and Ross basically have like a fangirl moment here when they see Macbeth and hear about all the things that he's done on the battlefield. He's this incredible fighter and vanquisher of the rebels, right? And then finally they get to that's that whole kind of entrance with Ross, right? His wonders and his praises do contend, which should be thine or his. Thy personal venture in the rebels fight, you're the coolest, Macbeth. I think you're so cool. And then we have the final get to it, right? Why is Ross there? Well, Ross is there to give him his new title, to tell him that he is now Thane of Cawdor. And Macbeth questions this. Of course, this is very shocking for him, because the witches just predicted this, right? It's not... If that had been their only prediction, I don't think this would have affected him as much. But because they have that next prediction as king, this is kind of like a confirmation that the king might actually happen. And so I think that if it had just been Thane of Cawdor, he would have been a lot kind of like, ooh, cool, like shock and awe. But he wouldn't have been kind of blown away the way he is, knowing that there's an eventual prediction as king, right? So he says, why do you dress me in borrowed robes, the Thane of Cawdor still lives. And Angus explains to him the Thane lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears that life which he deserves to lose. So because of his betrayal, the Thane of Cawdor is going to die. And congratulations, buddy, you get that title. And so we have this aside, and I forgot to mention this, and this is why I had to pause. In one of your books, it says to himself, or to kind of indicate that even though there's a bunch of people around, when you see the aside note or to himself note, it means that the character is now having an inner dialogue. He's talking to himself. So you as the audience have to understand that even though you're imagining this and there are 3 other people on the stage, right? Angus, Ross, and Banquo, when he says aside, just aside, or to himself, Macbeth is talking to himself. This is an inner dialogue that we can hear because we have to, right? We have to know what he's thinking. But he's not speaking to the others. No one else on the stage can hear him. Kind of trippy if you were to see this on stage, but imagine the person like whispering to themselves and no one can hear that, right? Just loud enough for the audience to hear. So to himself, Macbeth says, Glamis and Thane of Cawdor, the greatest is behind. To Ross and Angus, he says, thanks for your pains. And then aside to Banquo, do you not hope your children shall be kings, when those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them? So he has this aside kind of noting, oh my gosh, right? These witches' predictions were real. And then, he formally thanks Ross and Angus, and then aside whispers to Banquo, dude, do you get it? The witches were telling the truth. Your kids are going to be kings. I might be a king, right? This is very exciting. And so Banquo is going to aside whisper back to him. So I just wanted to explain what those are. When you see the aside or to himself, the actor is talking to himself. No one else can hear them. Or if it says aside to a person, they're kind of whispering with that person. I hope that's not confusing. Okay, here we go.
That trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown besides the Thane of Cawdor. But 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betray us in deepest consequence. Cousins, a word I pray you.
2 truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. I thank you, gentlemen. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not.
Look how our partners rap.
If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir.
New honors come upon him like our strange garments, cleave not to their mold, but with the aid of use.
Come what come may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day.
Worthy Macbeth, we stay upon your leisure.
Ah, give me your favor. My dull brain was wrought with things forgotten. Kind gentlemen, your pains are registered where every day I turn the leaf to read them. Let us toward the king. Think upon what hath chanced, and at more time, the interim having waited, let us speak our free hearts each to other.
Very gladly.
Till then, enough. Come, friends.
We have like 4 more seconds of that awesome violin. I'm not being sarcastic. I love that violin. Okay. So I paused it right before Banquo's kind of address to Macbeth, right? Macbeth asking him, well, aren't you excited now? Because your children are going to be kings. Oh my gosh. And And Banquo, we see, has a very realistic idea of how to approach this. His lines, again, not sure if the lines match up here very well, but I'm looking at the blue. They don't. Banquo's line, his aside response to Macbeth is, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles. So basically, evilness tempts us with good things, with small truths, right? And then to betray in deepest consequence. Cousins, a word I pray you, and then he goes to talk to Angus and Ross. This moment that he has with Macbeth is a very intelligent piece of advice, right? That the evilest things can sometimes come wrapped in nice packages. Just because the witches predicted a truth and this is a positive thing, you can't really take what they said at full face value because they're not, we don't know who they are, right? We don't know why they would do that, why they would tell us this prediction. What are their motives? So Banquo is a very logical person about this. Macbeth, you guys will see, is very emotional and very quick to react and think, and maybe this is why he's such a good soldier, because he doesn't really pause, he just does. But then Macbeth begins talking to himself, and you guys can kind of hear the difference, right? Banquo and his conversation with Ross and Angus kind of feel distant as Macbeth begins to kind of have this little moment to himself. And he talks about the supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success, commencing in truth, I am Thane of Cawdor. So if we see these predictions, this is Macbeth thinking out his thoughts, and a lot of Shakespearean characters do this, right? If this is a bad omen, then why is there such a good result? Thane of Cawdor, no one, I mean, Thane of Cawdor, the present one's gonna get his head cut off, but he kind of deserves it. So no one, I mean, innocent is really getting hurt here, and Macbeth is benefiting from the witch's prediction. Fantastic. That's great news. But it can't be good either, because that second prediction means that something happens to King Duncan, right? The man that he serves. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Why would I think? I'm going to read the next one here. Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thoughts, these are his imaginings, his thoughts, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not. We already have the word murder being thrown out there. Macbeth is not kind of questioning he's not questioning, how he would become king. He's already made up his mind. In order for him to become king, Duncan has to die. And this is already where Macbeth's head has gone. And he's already kind of chastising himself. How could I think of that? How could I think of killing my king, of betraying him like that, of becoming a murderer? At the same time, it's there. No one solicited it. The witches just said, you will be king. Nowhere did they say, you should kill the king, or you're going to have to take the crown by murder, right? No one ever said that, but that's where Macbeth's brain goes. And even though he's here telling us it's a horrid thought, he can't stand to imagine it, here we are. He's imagining it, killing the king and taking his crown. That escalated quickly. And so we have this, his continued, if chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. He pauses for a moment and he thinks, if chance, if fate will really have me be king, maybe I don't need to do anything. Maybe, just maybe, I could just let the pages of fate unfold and I'll become king at the end of it, right? Maybe. And then, of course, the Banquo and the others come back. He says, give me favor, forgive me. My dull brain was wrought with things forgotten. And he kind of comes back to, right, away from his thinkings. But he does do an aside with Banquo. He wants a moment in the near future to talk about what they have seen. They're the only two that have heard this prediction. Banquo's kind of already made his feelings known that he doesn't believe them to be true. But Macbeth wants a conversation with him after knowing that, he is Thane of Cawdor. Is it, is this really kind of BS in Banquo's eyes? I don't know. All right, so I am going to stop there with you guys today because we're literally at about an hour. With my explanations, it always takes this long to read this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and then further instructions will be in the stream. And you can replay this, listen to it as many times as you guys want. And go ahead and